Gentleman from the 39th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Unanimous consent to take up AJR 86 at this time.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, the clerk will read the title of the resolution.
Assembly Joint Resolution 86 relating to declaring March 10th, 2006 as Tibet Day.
Questions adoption. Gentleman from the 48th on adoption.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd like to thank the body for allowing this to come forward today. I'd also like to thank the gentleman from the 77th for allowing me to be the main author of this resolution, which he has authored in the past due to my special connection with the Tibetan community. I'm honored to speak in support of this resolution in recognition of my family and friends who are members of the Tibetan community. And today I'd like to recognize one of our friends who's in the Tibetan community and who's also a part of our legislative family. Many of you know Sherab Latsang. He's the Assistant Senate Sergeant of Arms. And I asked Sherab to stop by and say hello to us today. Sherab, if you could just wave. Thanks a lot for coming by, Sherab. And on this day when we recognize Tibet and its struggles, I thought I would, with Sherab's permission, I would like to share a bit of Sherab's personal story because it's very illustrative of the Tibetan situation. Sherab was born in India after the invasion of Tibet by the People's Republic of China. Sherab's father had fled from Lhasa, the capital of Tibet, to India, where he met Sherab's mom, who had also had to flee from Tibet. They later were married and settled down in India, where Sherab, the second of 4 children, was born. Now, unlike many of us, Sherab has never been able to meet his maternal or paternal grandparents or any of his relatives that were not able to escape Tibet after the Chinese invasion. Sherab cannot even visit his relatives in his country for fear of being arrested by the communist Chinese regime. Sherab immigrated to the U.S. in 1992 and now works, as I mentioned, in the Wisconsin State Senate as the Assistant Senate Sergeant of Arms. Sherab is one of over 500 Tibetans living in Wisconsin, all of them employed and are contributing participants in our community. I'm proud to call Sherab my friend and our colleague, and I thank you again for coming by here today, Sherab. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, not all the Tibetans have fared as well as Sherab. Since 1959, over 1 million Tibetans have been killed as a result of the Chinese occupation of their country. With the Chinese policy of resettlement of Chinese to Tibet, Tibetans have become a minority in their own country. China is now the official language in Tibet. And compared to pre-1959 levels, only 1/20th of the number of monks are still allowed to practice their religion. Under the Chinese government, approximately 6,000 monasteries and shrines have been destroyed in Tibet. Famines have appeared for the first time in recorded history. Natural resources are devastated and wildlife depleted to extinction. Tibetan culture in Tibet faces the very real threat of eradication. Since 1967, Tibet has been used for nuclear testing, including tests to determine the radiation tolerance of the local population. Tibetan women are subjected to mandatory sterilization and forced abortions as a means of reducing the Tibetan population. Tibetan women, including nuns who are arrested for their religious beliefs, are sexually violated. 1 in 10 Tibetans have been held in prison or forced labor camps for periods of 10 to 20 years. Today, approximately 10,000 religious and political prisoners face torture, forced labor, and execution. Even pictures of His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, the spiritual and political leader of Tibet, are banned. And if you are caught with one in Tibet, you will be sent to prison. So, Mr. Speaker, today I rise to recognize the struggle of the Tibetan people, to express my great respect for their culture and their heritage, and to pray for a peaceful resolution to their plight. Thank you.
Questions adoption of the resolution. Gentleman from the 77th on adoption.
Mr. Speaker, the gentleman from the 48th very well discussed the Tibetan situation at length, so I won't take much time to add to what he said. But I do want to note, I have a great many Tibetan immigrants who live in my district who have become very productive citizens of this country, but as many of the groups who have come to this land of freedom because their lands do not offer freedom and freedom has been taken from them, they do not forget the struggle in their homeland and have waged it with great passion and nonviolently. And the reason I rise is to invite anyone who is here tomorrow or staff who may be not listening to join myself and the gentleman from the 48th and many others with the members of the Tibetan community at noon on the State Street steps of the Capitol to once again honor the Tibetan people and to join them in their fight and support their fight for freedom from one of the few remaining communist governments in the world, from communist China. So I'd like to invite you all to be there at noon, and if not, to continue in your words and deeds and will you vote for this resolution to support the struggle of a very courageous people against an oppressive government.
Questions adoption of the resolution. All those in favor of adoption signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. Motion carried. The resolution is adopted. Gentleman from the 39th.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And ask suspend rules immediately. Message AGR 86 to the Senate.
Is there any objection? Hearing none, it's in the Senate.